I think I didn't do anything wrong, just tried to be funny. When I found the note on the kitchen counter that said, "You finally got your audience, now live without me," I thought it was a joke. It wasn't. That was the day my husband decided to turn my joke into paperwork. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. It started as a joke, at least that's what I kept telling myself. I was sitting on the couch one Friday night, scrolling through social media, while Ethan tinkered with something in the garage. He always spent his evenings fixing things no one had asked him to fix. I'd had a long day, a few glasses of wine, and I wanted to feel clever, seen. So I opened my phone camera, snapped a picture of our wedding photo on the shelf, and wrote the caption that would ruin everything. Some women get diamonds. I got a man with a small toolbox and even smaller tools. It sounded witty in the moment, playful. People loved self-deprecating humor, and I'd always been good at turning my life into content. My followers expected it, the teasing, the sarcasm. Most of my posts were little jabs at married life. I figured this would be the same. Within minutes, the likes started rolling in. Laughing emojis, comments from my friends saying I was too funny. Someone wrote, "Poor Ethan, but we stan a queen who tells the truth." I laughed, hit like, and added another post to my story. A boomerang of me raising my wine glass with the caption, "Cheers to honesty." When Ethan came back inside, he looked tired, grease on his hands. He asked what was so funny. I told him I'd made a post that went viral faster than anything I'd done before. He asked what it was. I told him he wouldn't get it. It was married humor. He didn't smile. He asked me to show him anyway. I hesitated but handed him the phone, pretending it wasn't a big deal. His expression didn't change while he read it. He just stared at the screen, then looked at me. Finally, he said, "You think this is funny?" I shrugged. "It's a joke, Ethan. Everyone knows I'm exaggerating." He handed the phone back. "You tagged me." I laughed, trying to lighten the moment. "It's good for engagement. People like seeing couples tease each other." He said quietly, "You humiliated me." I rolled my eyes. "You're overreacting. It's just the internet. Nobody cares." He said he cared. That was when I started getting annoyed. He'd always been so serious, so literal. I told him maybe if he wasn't so uptight, people wouldn't think the post was true. He didn't say anything else. He just wiped his hands on a towel and went upstairs. I poured another glass of wine and scrolled through the comments again. They made me feel powerful. Everyone laughing, agreeing, tagging their friends. Some women shared the post, saying I was brave enough to say what others only think. When I went to bed later, Ethan was already asleep, or pretending to be. He'd turned his back to me, and I decided to ignore it. I wasn't going to apologize for being funny. People were too sensitive these days. The next morning, the post had doubled in likes overnight. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I was half thrilled, half guilty. A tiny part of me wanted to delete it, but then my mother called. She said she'd seen it and thought it was hilarious. "You always had your father's sense of humor," she said, laughing. "Men get so touchy about these things. Tell Ethan not to take it personally." I said he was already taking it personally. She told me to ignore him, that he'd get over it. "Men like him always do," she said. When Ethan came down, he didn't speak to me. He made coffee, read the news, and went outside to mow the lawn, even though it was still wet from rain. I told him I didn't understand why he was acting like a victim. He said quietly that he wasn't acting. I told him it wasn't even that bad. It wasn't like I'd lied. He looked at me then, really looked, and said, "You just don't know when to stop." I hated the calmness in his voice. I wanted him to argue, to shout. Instead, he turned away. That's when I started gaslighting myself into believing I'd done nothing wrong. By noon, people from work had started sharing the post too. My friend Carrie texted that Ethan must be dying inside. I replied with laughing emojis, though her words made me feel oddly cold. When I checked Ethan's page, I saw he'd deactivated his account. That annoyed me more than anything. I told myself he was trying to make me look like the bad guy by disappearing. When he still hadn't come back inside by dinner, I called out from the back door. He said he was busy. I said he was being dramatic. He said he needed some space. I asked if he was really that fragile. He didn't answer. That night, I went out with friends to clear my head. We sat at a bar downtown, and they kept teasing me about the post, saying I'd gone viral for being honest. I leaned into it, laughing along. One of them, Darren, the trainer from my gym, said I should own it completely. He suggested doing a follow-up post about fragile egos. He said people loved that kind of confidence. When I got home after midnight, the house was dark. I assumed Ethan was asleep again. But when I walked into the kitchen, I saw something on the counter, a folded piece of paper. I opened it, still half smiling. It wasn't a long note. Just one line written in his neat handwriting. "You finally got your audience. Now live without me." For a moment, I thought it was another joke. I even laughed. Then I noticed his ring sitting next to the note, along with his keys. The car was gone. His shoes were gone. His closet, when I checked, was half empty. I stood there for a long time, the words on the paper burning into me. I told myself he was bluffing, that he'd come back once he calmed down. I even took a photo of the note to show my mother later, saying, "Can you believe this overreaction?" I didn't delete the post. In fact, I pinned it. I told myself it was proof that I had a sense of humor, that I wasn't going to let anyone guilt me into shame. But every time I looked at that note, the joke felt smaller, meaner. Still, I couldn't admit it out loud. Instead, I poured another glass of wine, opened my phone, and read through the comments again. They called me bold, fearless, hilarious. I told myself that mattered more than one man's pride. I was wrong, of course, but I wasn't ready to know that yet. Monday morning at school felt heavier than usual. The hallways were loud, but the noise seemed to fade around me, replaced by a low hum of whispers. I caught a few glances from other teachers, the kind that lasted half a second too long. It took me until lunch to realize why. Someone had seen the post. Of course they had. Half the town probably had by now. In the staff room, my coworker Tessa smiled in that polite, pitying way that made my stomach tighten. She said she'd seen my funny little post and hoped Ethan wasn't too embarrassed. I laughed it off, said we always teased each other like that, said he loved it really. She didn't look convinced. "Well," she said, stirring her tea, "people are talking. But you know how small towns are." When I checked my phone later, the post had doubled again in shares. The comments were changing tone now. At first, it had been playful, mostly from women cheering me on. But then came the men. Defensive, mocking. A few wrote things like, "Imagine if he posted about her weight." That stung. I deleted some comments, blocked a few accounts, and tried to ignore the guilt creeping in. During my last class of the day, my phone buzzed non-stop in my desk drawer. I didn't check until after dismissal. It was a text from Ethan. Only one line. "I saw what you wrote under Darren's comment." My stomach flipped. I opened the thread. Darren had commented on my post last night. "Guess size really doesn't matter if you've got personality." I'd replied, "Well, someone has to bring the energy." At the time, it had felt witty. Flirty, maybe, but harmless. Now it looked cruel. I texted Ethan back. It was just a joke. "You're taking everything too seriously." He didn't reply. At dinner that night, I went to my parents' house because I couldn't stand the silence of mine. My mother was delighted to see me. My father looked wary. "How's Ethan?" he asked. I told him Ethan had gone to stay with a friend for a few days, that he needed space. My mother said men were dramatic. "He'll come back once he realizes you were kidding," she said. "You always joke that way, even as a child." My father folded his napkin slowly. "Jokes that hurt people aren't jokes," he said. I told him not to take sides. He said quietly, "I'm not. I'm telling you to think about why he left." I left before dessert. When I got home, I saw that Ethan's social media accounts were still gone. The house was too clean, too organized, like it had been emptied of noise. On the counter, the note still sat folded exactly where I'd left it. I moved it into a drawer because I couldn't look at it anymore. The next morning, my coworker Aaron caught me in the parking lot. "Hey," he said carefully, "you know Ethan's company works with one of our parent volunteers, right?" I said yes. "Well, apparently people at his office saw your post. Someone printed it out and put it on the break room fridge." I felt my chest tighten. "That's ridiculous," I said. "Why would anyone do that?" He shrugged. "People love gossip, but you might want to take it down." I told him it wasn't that serious, but his expression said he didn't believe me. When I got to my classroom, I opened the app again. The post was still climbing in numbers. I told myself deleting it would look weak, like admitting guilt, so instead, I changed the caption to something more neutral. "Marriage humor. Don't take life too seriously." It didn't help. Someone screenshotted the original. The old version was now spreading faster. By midweek, I started getting tagged in videos, people making duets and memes using my post as the punchline. One of them even included a photo of Ethan taken from my older uploads, blurred but recognizable. The caption read, "Prayers for this poor man." That night, my mother called again. She said Ethan's mother, Claire, had phoned her in tears. She said, "You humiliated him in front of his co-workers," my mother said. "Why would she call me about it?" I told her Claire was overreacting. My mother said, "Maybe, but this isn't looking good, Maribel." I could hear my father in the background saying, "Maybe it's time she apologizes." I snapped that I wasn't apologizing for a joke. "Everyone's acting like I committed a crime," I said. "It's social media, not a courtroom." But inside, I was starting to panic. Every time I checked my notifications, the number was higher. The story had taken on a life of its own. I couldn't even tell what people were laughing at anymore, me or Ethan. Probably both. On Thursday, Darren messaged me. "Ignore the haters," he wrote. "You were hilarious. People just can't handle confidence." I wanted to believe him, so when he invited me to grab coffee after work, I said yes. At the cafe, he kept complimenting how real I was. He said most women were afraid to speak their minds. I told him Ethan never appreciated my sense of humor, that he always made me feel like I was walking on eggshells. Darren said, "That's because he's the punchline." I laughed, but something about it felt off. Still, when he touched my hand across the table, I didn't move it away. It wasn't attraction exactly. It was validation. Someone who didn't make me feel small for being myself. When I got home that night, there was an envelope on the doormat, my name written in Ethan's handwriting. Inside was a short letter. "Maribel, I've seen everything. The post, the comments, the coffee. I'm done being your joke. Don't contact me until you understand what respect means." No signature, just his initials. I read it 3 times. Then I texted my mother, saying he'd left a dramatic note again. She told me to ignore it, that he'd come back when the attention faded. But as I looked at the note, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. The first note had sounded like anger. This one sounded like finality. I opened my phone and went back to the post. The number of likes had passed 100,000. For a moment, I felt the old rush again, being seen, being talked about. But then I read the newest comment, one that simply said, "He left because you couldn't stop laughing at him." I turned off my phone. For the first time, the silence didn't feel powerful. It felt like consequence. By Friday, the air around me felt different, thicker somehow. Everyone at school knew. Some smiled awkwardly when I passed, others avoided my eyes altogether. The principal even called me into her office just to check in. She asked if everything was all right at home, if the situation online was under control. I said yes, acting surprised that she'd even bring it up. She said teachers should be mindful of their digital presence. I told her the post was private humor between husband and wife. She didn't argue, but the look she gave me said she'd already made up her mind. I went home early that day. The house felt emptier than before. Ethan's shoes were still gone from the hallway. His tools were missing from the garage. I opened the closet in our bedroom and saw the blank spaces where his clothes used to hang, the neat vacuum of absence. That's when it hit me. He wasn't staying with a friend. He'd actually moved out. I sat on the bed for a while, scrolling through my phone again, looking for something that would make me feel right. Darren's messages were still there from the night before, full of encouragement. "You deserve someone who gets your humor," he'd written. "Some people are just too uptight." He'd asked if I wanted to come by the gym after hours to talk. I told myself it wasn't inappropriate. It was just support. So I went. The gym was nearly empty when I arrived. The lights were dim, music playing low. Darren smiled when he saw me, that easy, confident smile that always felt like warmth after Ethan's quiet disapproval. He asked how I was holding up. I told him the truth, or at least my version of it, that Ethan had abandoned me because of a stupid joke, that everyone had turned me into a villain for having a sense of humor. Darren said people only call women villains when they stop pretending to be nice. We talked for an hour, maybe more. He complimented my laugh, said I shouldn't let anyone make me feel ashamed for being myself. At one point, he brushed my arm. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make me feel wanted again, even if it was just pity disguised as interest. I leaned into it. When I got home, there was a message from my mother waiting. "Call me now." I sighed and called. She said Claire, Ethan's mother, had been talking to people. She'd told the entire extended family that I had publicly humiliated her son. My mother was furious. "That woman's always thought her boy was too good for you," she said. "Let her gossip. You'll come out stronger." My father got on the line next. "Maribel," he said, "stop posting, stop explaining, just apologize and move on." I said, "It's not that simple." He said, "It's exactly that simple." Then he hung up. The next morning, a new notification appeared, an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, "Cease and desist, personal defamation." My stomach dropped. I opened it and saw the letterhead from a law firm. It was polite, professional, and terrifying. "Mr. Ethan Ashcroft requests that Mrs. Maribel Ashcroft refrain from further public commentary, online or otherwise, that may constitute defamation or character degradation. This includes, but is not limited to, social media posts, captions, and comments directed toward or referencing Mr. Ashcroft." At the bottom, there was a note about preliminary asset separation. I read it 3 times, unable to process the words. Ethan hadn't just left. He'd gone to a lawyer. I called him immediately, straight to voicemail. I left a message, my voice trembling. "Ethan, this is insane. You're turning our marriage into a lawsuit. It was a joke. I never meant to hurt you." No response. I tried again an hour later. "We can talk this out. You don't have to make it public. People are already laughing at me." Still nothing. That evening, I met Darren again. This time, he was distracted. He said the attention online was a little much. He told me people from the gym had started whispering. He even hinted he might get in trouble for fraternizing with clients. The warmth from before was gone. He said I should maybe lay low for a while. "Lay low?" I asked. "You told me to own it." He shrugged. That was before it got messy. So that was it. His support was conditional. He liked the idea of me when it was rebellious, not when it was real. I left the gym without saying goodbye. Back home, I poured a glass of wine and sat at the table, staring at the letter again. The words blurred together. Cease, desist, separation, each one colder than the last. I opened my phone, scrolling through messages I hadn't answered. My friend Tessa had sent me a screenshot. Apparently, Ethan's company had issued an internal memo about digital professionalism after my post went viral. I felt sick. Then another message popped up, this time from Ethan's brother, Leo. Leave him alone. You got your laugh. Now give him peace. I threw the phone onto the couch. Peace. That word again. Everyone kept using it, as if I were the noise. Maybe I was. Later, I sat down and drafted a new post, something soft and reflective. Sometimes people can't take a joke because they're still learning to love themselves. I stared at it for a while, then hit post. The backlash came instantly. The comments were vicious this time. You're gaslighting him. You humiliated your husband and now play victim. Apologize or delete your account. I deleted the post within the hour. It didn't matter. Screenshots were already everywhere. By Sunday, I couldn't go anywhere without feeling watched. At the grocery store, I overheard two women whispering my name. At the gas station, someone honked when they saw me and shouted, "Got any new jokes?" When I got home, I found another envelope slipped under my door. This one wasn't from a lawyer. It was from Ethan. No greeting, no explanation, just a single sentence written in pen. You used my name for attention. I'm taking it back. I sat down hard, the paper trembling in my hand. I didn't know what that meant exactly, but I knew it wasn't good. That night, I checked our shared bank account. My name was gone. The balance was 0. I told myself he couldn't just do that it wasn't legal, that he was punishing me for being myself. But deep down, I knew he wasn't acting out of anger. He was protecting himself from me. And for the first time, I realized the power wasn't in the post, or the likes, or the jokes. It was in the silence he left behind, and how impossible it was for me to fill it. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the words again. You used my name for attention. I'm taking it back. The letters burned behind my eyelids like a warning. I kept replaying everything I'd said, every joke, every deflection. It all felt smaller now, crueler, but I couldn't let anyone see that. I told myself the best way to fix this was to control the story before Ethan did. By morning, I had a plan. I was going to make an apology video. Well, a clarification, really. Something polished and sympathetic. If I could get people to see it from my perspective, maybe they'd remember I was human, not just a headline. I set up my phone in the living room, brushed my hair, and hit record. I started with a shaky breath, pretending to choke up a little. I just want to clear the air, I said. I never meant to hurt anyone. It was just humor between partners, something light. The internet twisted it. I paused, trying to look sincere. Ethan's a good man. He's private, and I respect that, but I think people took my words the wrong way. Sometimes we make jokes to cope with stress. That's all it was. I uploaded it to all my accounts. Within an hour, it had thousands of views. But instead of sympathy, the comments were worse. This isn't an apology. You're blaming everyone but yourself. He deserves better. One user wrote, "Imagine humiliating your husband and then performing sadness for views." That one stung. I turned off the comments but left the video up. My mother called a few minutes later, crying. She said people were attacking her online too. "I defended you," she said. "I told them Ethan's always been cold, that you were just trying to get a reaction." I told her to stop commenting. She said she couldn't. People were calling me names, and she couldn't stand by. My father got on the line. "You need to stop posting," he said flatly. "You're making it worse." "I'm trying to fix it," I snapped. "You can't fix this online," he said. "You broke something real." I hung up. That afternoon, an email came from Ethan's lawyer. This message serves as confirmation that mediation has been scheduled to discuss division of joint assets and online damages. It included a date, a time, and a long list of documents I was supposed to bring. Online damages. That phrase made me feel sick. I called the number listed at the bottom of the email. A woman answered. I told her there must be some mistake, that this wasn't serious, that it was a misunderstanding between spouses. She said calmly, "Mrs. Ashcroft, Our client is proceeding with full separation. He's divorcing me over a post? I asked, my voice cracking. He's protecting himself, she said, and hung up. I threw the phone across the couch. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I opened social media again, needing distraction, validation, something. The apology video had been shared by a gossip page with the headline, "Teacher who mocked husband posts, non-apology, still no sign of husband." The comments under it were endless. Classic narcissist move. She's just upset she lost her meal ticket. Notice how she never actually says sorry. I slammed my laptop shut, heart pounding. I told myself they didn't know me. They didn't know how Ethan could be. How he'd make me feel like every conversation was a test. I convinced myself he wanted me quiet, invisible, perfect. My jokes were rebellion, not cruelty. That's what I told myself, even though deep down I knew the truth. That evening, my mother showed up at my door without warning. She looked panicked. "Your video is everywhere," she said. "They're calling you unstable. Claire's talking to the local paper." I laughed bitterly. "Of course she is." My mother grabbed my hands. "We can still fix this. You just need to make him understand you didn't mean it. He won't answer my calls." "Then write to him," she said. "He loved your letters." I didn't want to, but something about the word loved made my throat tighten. So after she left, I sat down at the kitchen table and started writing. "Ethan, I know you think I was cruel. Maybe I was, but I never set out to hurt you. I was trying to be funny, to get attention, yes, but not the kind that replaces you. I just wanted to feel seen. I've always felt invisible next to you. Quiet, practical you. You fix things. I make things. I thought we balanced each other. Maybe I was wrong. I signed it, folded it, and left it by the door, hoping he'd stop by for mail or something. But he didn't. The next morning, I woke up to another envelope. This one was delivered by courier, official seal, thick paper, heavier than the others. Inside was a printed list of accounts: joint savings, checking, utilities, insurance. Next to each was a signature line with only his initials. At the bottom, one sentence in legal type: "Mr. Ashcroft has fulfilled all marital financial obligations. No further contact required." That was it. Clean, cold, final. I called my mother again. "He's serious," I said. She refused to believe it. "He's bluffing," she insisted. "He's trying to scare you into begging. Don't give him the satisfaction." But I could hear something shift in her voice, an uncertainty she couldn't hide. That evening, I went out for groceries. As I stood in line, 2 women behind me whispered my name. One said, "That's her, the teacher from the post." The other laughed quietly. I turned around and said, "It's not that funny." They went silent. When I got home, there was another note taped to the door. This one wasn't from Ethan. It was from the school district. "We request your attendance at an internal review meeting to address concerns regarding professional conduct and social media policy." I sat down on the floor, clutching the paper, feeling my pulse in my throat. Everything was unraveling, not just my marriage, but my job, my reputation, my whole identity. I opened my laptop again and stared at the viral post one last time. The original caption was still there, screenshotted 1,000 times over. My joke, frozen forever. I finally deleted it, but it didn't matter. It was already everywhere. My name tied to a laugh that had cost me everything. I sat there in the dark, the empty house echoing with quiet, and thought about how Ethan had looked when he read that first post. How he didn't yell or argue, just looked disappointed. I used to think disappointment was harmless. Now I understood it could destroy you quietly, one signature at a time. The mediation office was colder than I expected. Grey walls, metal chairs, no warmth at all. I wore a black blazer, something that made me look serious, professional, untouchable. I told myself this was my chance to explain, to remind Ethan that what we had wasn't just something you sign away. But when the door opened, it wasn't him. It was his lawyer, a tall man in a navy suit who smiled politely without showing any teeth. He sat across from me, placed a neat stack of folders on the table, and said, "Mr. Ashcroft won't be joining us today. He prefers to handle matters through representation." That stung more than I wanted to admit. "So he can humiliate me publicly, but can't even look me in the eye," I said. The lawyer didn't blink. "Mr. Ashcroft hasn't made any public statements." I laughed, a sharp sound. "That's exactly it. He doesn't have to. His silence is the statement." He nodded slightly, like he was used to people saying too much. "Let's go through the documentation." He slid a folder toward me. Inside were spreadsheets, copies of emails, screenshots of my posts, even messages between Darren and me. My stomach twisted. "You can't use private conversations," I said. "They were public for a time," he replied evenly. Mr. Ashcroft collected everything before removing himself from the situation. He wishes to avoid further conflict. "Conflict?" I said. "This isn't conflict, it's abandonment." He paused. "You've already been compensated for the joint assets," he said. "Mr. Ashcroft's only request is that you refrain from further online activity referencing him." I stared at the papers. So he just gets to walk away, take everything. My life's been ripped apart, and he gets to hide behind lawyers and silence. The lawyer folded his hands. "Mrs. Ashcroft, my client has chosen dignity. That is his right." That word again, dignity, it made me feel small, childish, like I'd missed some rule everyone else understood. I didn't sign anything that day. I told him I needed time to review. He said calmly that the documents would remain valid for 10 business days. Then he stood, shook my hand, and left. When I got home, the house felt even emptier than before. The walls seemed to echo every sound I made. I poured myself a drink and called my mother, hoping for comfort, but she sounded different, tired. "Honey," she said softly, "maybe it's time to stop fighting." "I'm not fighting," I said. "I'm standing up for myself." "You're standing alone," she said, and for once she didn't add a defense. After we hung up, I scrolled through my phone. My apology video was still being shared, now clipped into compilations on gossip channels. Every version twisted my words differently. Some called me a narcissist. Others called me the woman who mocked her husband into leaving. I couldn't watch anymore. That night, I wrote Ethan an email. I told myself it was closure, not desperation. "Ethan, I met your lawyer today. I saw what you've done. Congratulations. You've turned our marriage into an exhibit. Do you feel proud? Because I don't. You could have talked to me. You could have given me a chance to fix it. But you always choose silence over effort. That's not dignity. That's cowardice." I hit send before I could think twice. The next morning, his lawyer replied. Not him. Never him. Just one line. "Mr. Ashcroft requests that you refrain from further personal communication. Continued contact may result in a restraining order." A restraining order. For emails. I laughed out loud, but it came out more like a gasp. I spent the rest of the day pacing. I couldn't focus on anything. I wanted him to see what he'd done, to understand that he'd taken things too far. So I made one last post. It wasn't cruel, not like before. It was just a picture of my hand without the ring, resting on an empty table with the caption, "When silence becomes punishment, love becomes memory." It felt poetic, controlled, maybe even mature. Within minutes, people began commenting again. "She's still milking it. Why can't she let him go? He escaped just in time." I deleted the post within an hour, but it didn't matter. Someone had already reposted it with screenshots of the legal documents that had leaked. They even tagged the law firm. The next morning, I received another envelope, hand-delivered this time. Inside was the final settlement agreement. It was signed by Ethan, witnessed, notarized. Everything was in his name now. The house, the car, the savings. My name was nowhere. There was also a letter attached, typed but unmistakably written by him. Maribel, this isn't revenge, it's self-preservation. You said once that love was about making each other visible. I tried to do that, but all you wanted was an audience. I can't compete with that. I won't. Take care of yourself. No greeting, no goodbye, no emotion. Just a statement of fact. I read it 3 times, waiting for anger to come, but it didn't. Just this hollow ache in my chest. By evening, my mother called again. She said Ethan's family had already cleaned out the rest of his things from storage. Claire had told her, very pointedly, that I should respect boundaries. My mother's voice trembled. I don't even know what to say anymore, she admitted. I told her not to say anything. Words had done enough damage. Later that night, I went through the folders from the lawyer again, reading the summaries of our marriage written like an accounting ledger. Dates, statements, transactions, screenshots. Each one turned something intimate into evidence. It was strange how official paper could erase years of laughter, plans, birthdays, and mornings. I poured another drink, stared at the empty wall where our wedding photo had hung. I remembered how I'd captioned that same photo in my post, how I'd turned our story into a punchline. I thought about Ethan seeing it, his co-workers, his friends, his family, and realizing I'd made his private life a spectacle. For the first time, I didn't try to defend it in my head. I just sat there, staring at the papers, realizing how simple his revenge had been. No shouting, no fighting, just silence and signatures. I went to bed without turning off the lights. The next morning, I checked my phone out of habit, half expecting some new comment, some message that would pull me back into the noise. There was nothing. No notifications, no mentions, no texts. For years, I'd wanted the world to listen. Now that it had gone quiet, I didn't know what to do with the silence. Somewhere in that stillness, I understood what he'd meant in his note. He hadn't taken anything from me that I hadn't already given away. The silence didn't fade. It grew heavier. The house felt too large for me, like it was holding its breath, waiting for a sound that would never come. Days blurred together, each one quieter than the last. I stopped opening the blinds. I couldn't stand the light on the empty walls. It had been a week since I signed the papers. The lawyer sent a final message confirming receipt. All matters concluded, it said. I stared at that line for hours. Concluded. As if our life together had been a meeting you could end with a polite email. I told myself I'd move on. I even drafted a new social media post. Something brave and forward-looking, like, sometimes endings are beginnings in disguise. But before I could hit publish, I heard Ethan's voice in my head, calm and distant. You used my name for attention. I'm taking it back. I deleted the draft. That night, I went through the last of his things. A few shirts, a watch he never wore, some papers he'd left in a drawer. I found another envelope inside, smaller than the others, addressed to me in his handwriting. My heart started pounding before I even opened it. Inside was a single photograph, our wedding day. We were laughing, faces caught mid-motion, sunlight on his shoulder. On the back he'd written, "This was real once. Remember it kindly." I sat on the floor and stared at it until my eyes blurred. That was what undid me. Not the lawyers, not the silence, but that single sentence. He hadn't wished me well. He hadn't cursed me. He just asked me to remember. For the first time, I realized how little I'd remembered him lately. The man, not the target. The quiet patience, the small gestures, the way he'd check the locks twice before bed, how he'd bring me tea when I was grading papers late, how he always said my name softly, like it was something fragile. I had turned all that into a punchline. My phone buzzed on the counter. A message from Darren. "So, how's everything?" Just like that, casual, detached. I stared at it for a long time, then typed back, "You were right. People can't handle honesty." I deleted it before sending. Instead, I turned off my phone and went to sit by the window. The street was quiet except for the faint hum of cars passing in the distance. I thought about how Ethan must have looked when he packed. Neat, calm, no drama. Probably humming under his breath. He always did that when he needed to think. I imagined him now, somewhere peaceful. Maybe with family, maybe alone. Free of noise, free of me. The next morning, another envelope arrived. This one from the school district. My review had concluded too. They wrote that my online behavior had compromised the institution's reputation. Effective immediately, I was suspended pending termination. I sat at the table, reading that line over and over. It didn't even hurt. It felt inevitable, like everything else that had happened. Later that evening, I finally opened my laptop again. My old post was still there, screenshotted, reposted, immortalized on other accounts. Every copy proof that I'd traded privacy for applause. I scrolled until I found one version with the caption, "Some jokes cost more than laughter." I didn't like it, didn't comment. I just stared at it. They were right. The house was dark by then. I got up, poured the last of the wine, and went back to the kitchen. On the counter sat Ethan's final letter, the photo beside it. I placed them both in a drawer and closed it gently, as if shutting a door. For a moment, I thought about calling him, just to say something small, something that might undo the quiet between us. But there was nothing left to say. The silence had already done what words never could. I stood there for a while, listening to the faint creak of the floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator, the faraway sound of someone's laughter outside. It struck me how strange it felt, that the world kept moving even after everything stopped for me. When I finally turned off the lights, the reflection in the window looked almost like someone else's face, tired, still, anonymous. And for the first time in months, I didn't reach for my phone. I just let the darkness settle and thought about how he'd once said, "Not every story needs an audience." Now, I understood exactly what he meant. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.